Traditionally, the term the New World has referred to the western hemisphere of the tiny planet we call Earth. Above all, it was and has been used as a reference to the Americas. I'm going to break with tradition ever so slightly in the context of this video and expand the New World's definition to include places such as Australia and New Zealand, and exclude Latin America. When I speak of the New World, I am in fact referring to the New Anglosphere, countries which include the United States, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, all of which have many similarities at the level of culture, history, and development. True, they are not carbon copies of each other by any means, and there are important differences. But for the purposes of this video, I am going to highlight some of the most salient commonalities between those countries and how they converge to produce a certain type of environment that creates a still more certain type of MGTOW-oriented man. I should state that it is not normally my practice to offer disclaimers as I make a video, but I feel that it might be necessary in this case, lest its content be too open to misinterpretation. I will be offering some critical opinions and observations concerning the New World, above all the United States, and because of that, if these countries and places are satisfactory to you as an individual, a MGTOW-oriented man, or a human being in any other capacity, nothing in this video is meant as a dig at you or people who might share your positive view of things. Instead, I seek to offer explanations and reasons as to why the New World appears to be the best spawning ground in the entire world for the going-your-own-way mindset, and how that trend tends to differentiate itself in other parts of the world, and why, at the end of it all, MGTOW expatria, or the man who has left his country, might find greater contentment abroad compared to the place of his birth, because there are facets within MGTOW that are best found outside of familiar camping grounds. As such, it should be clear that this video is not prescriptive in any way, shape, or form, rather descriptive and opinion-based, and it is my hope that in describing the landscape of a place such as the United States, you might recognize yourself in it as the proverbial fish out of water. One of the nigh universals I have observed within the context of the New World is the promise it offers to newcomers. Places such as the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada attract people from all over the world with the prospect of offering the possibility of a better life, and oftentimes, in material terms, such a prospect is made good on, and finds materialization in reality, no pun intended. All of these countries could fill libraries with stories of immigrants who had, through hard work and good luck, found their fortunes, and all of this is very understandable. Fleeing from war-ravaged countries, politically oppressive governments, or the worst of poverty, whatever their specific differences, the countries that comprise the New World offer people in exodus opportunities from other countries who had never had or could have had. That, of course, is the positive side of the New World. But where there is light, there is almost always also shadow. One of the consequences of this set of circumstances, and the particular opportunities that the New World offers, is that infused into the very cultural fabric of such places is a state of unrest, a need to climb, to outdo, outperform, to run a rat race with the fabled grand prize of a death certificate. The New World is at its heart a place that is not at peace with itself at the deepest level, and thus projects outward that deep historical, cultural, and structural issue onto its denizens, oftentimes driving them mad in subtle ways, and sometimes in still less than subtle ways. This is understandable in the same way that young people seek to prove themselves to the world, to test their merit, to climb, whereas older, more settled people tend to not display that quality, at least to the same degree, and, if they are lucky, they have an inner peace youth lacks. Distinctions between nations exist along similar lines. It is not the case that places such as the United States and Australia do not have histories. They most assuredly do. But baked into these histories is the same feverish dis-ease that characterizes unbridled youth. And this quality is one that has never left the New World. From the beginning, the New World was never at peace with itself, and it set itself on a trajectory to live a life of frenetic achievement and worry, all the while ignoring the downsides congenital to such a state of mind. And it is this mentality that often produces the most fertile grounds for some of the more alarming phenomena we can witness in modern society. Take no-fault divorce, for instance, ushered into paradigmatic existence by the great thespian governor of California, Ronald Reagan, who signed into force the Family Law Act of 1969, the first of its kind in the United States, that would come to be a role model for not just other states, but increasingly other countries. No-fault divorce, meaning, of course, that the traditional grounds for the dissolution of marriage, citing fault on specific grounds, such as infidelity or abuse, had given way largely to divorce on a whim, whenever and however the person chose to do so. Fair enough, you might think, but the unique historical circumstances of the United States, a country whose greatest claim to fame in the modern world is its fabulous wealth, and the fact that most of its citizens view monetary acquisition as the first and last stop on the bus ride of life, gave way to the massive and oftentimes disproportionate monetization of divorce, further accelerating disintegration of marriage, and bringing out the worst qualities in the country and its people, egged on, of course, by certain greedy lawyers. Need I say more? More broadly, the new world created by its very nature, the incessant need to always keep up with the Joneses, an itch that can never be scratched to satisfaction. The so-called American dream, the iconic descriptor of the United States, testifies to this, keeping all its pursuers in the largest hedonic treadmill ever devised, never truly offering the chaser any rest or respite, because each stop on America's hedonic dream journey merely reinforces and recatalyzes the apparent reasons the person in question had for chasing it in the first place. It never ends, because man's innate tendency towards dissatisfaction is baked into it, without ever acknowledging that the reality of the situation is that chasing glory is the surest fire way to a life most inglorious, and people's mileage will vary a great deal in pursuing such a thing. I am content to acknowledge that there are some in the new world that have few problems with such a system and few complaints. This video, however, is not intended for them. It has been passively observed, though far more seldom explained, why it seems that it is the new world, countries such as the United States, Canada, and others, that lead the way in producing an ever-growing body of MGTOW-oriented men, most of whom are not even aware of the acronym that others would use to describe them. Why did MGTOW and even other manosphere elements such as PUA et al. Find most currency in places such as the United States, Canada, and Australia? The New World places the seeds of discontent into the common man. These are countries that are not at peace with themselves, and as a consequence, they urge their denizens to push the boundaries of their own vanity, with little in turn as a reward except the mind-numbing dissatisfaction of running on the hedonic treadmill with no end in sight, save in death. It is not that other countries, such as those in Europe and elsewhere, do not produce what we term to be MGTOW. They do, and in ever greater numbers, as the great Pax Americana spreads its legacy across the globe. But it all pales in comparison to the American frame of mind, or the hipster cultural savoir-faire of some Melbourne urbanite, with all of their demands to be ever cooler, wealthier, hipper, trendier, and concomitantly ever more vacuous and ever more hollow. The flaws of these countries are deeply baked into the cake, and the consequences for the individual man are inescapable, whether they be in terms of pursuing meaningful relationships, marriage, or just plain old general life satisfaction. None of this is achievable when you are not allowed to leave the treadmill, because sooner or later it will kill you. And it is from this angle that I would ask what it means to go your own way to you, and if any of the things I've discussed sound eerily familiar, albeit not in any good way. I can tell you from my own life that I recognize that itch too well to keep up with the Joneses, to chase the breadcrumbs that the world lays out before you, because you are told that the breadcrumbs will lead you not just to the whole loaf, but a veritable feast at the end of it all. But the trail of crumbs never ends, in fact. Now, some of you may know one of my favorite characters in fantasy literature is Raistlin Magere, the misunderstood mage from the Dragonlance saga, and what he tells his traveling companion, Tanis Half-Elven, in the midst of what would come to be known as the War of the Lance, is telling, not just for Tanis, but for each and every man out there. Raistlin says, "Hope is the denial of reality. It is the carrot dangled before the draft horse to keep him plodding along in a vain attempt to reach it." To which Tanis replies, "Are you saying that we shouldn't hope?" And Raistlin confidently replies to that, "I'm saying we should remove the carrot and walk forward with our eyes open." The carrot here is nothing else than the many lies you have been fed, the endless tales of rags to riches, of unparalleled happiness found in being the horse chasing the American carrot. Similarly, Tyler Durden almost gets it right. "I see all the potential and I see it squandered. God damn it. An entire generation pumping gas, waiting tables, slaves with white collars. Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes. working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. We're the middle children of history, man. No purpose or place. We have no Great War, no Great Depression. Our Great War is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars. But we won't. We're slowly learning that fact, and we're very, very pissed off. A certain irony coming from Brad Pitt, admittedly. He says that anger is a solution, but I contend it is just a temporary stop. Walking away from it all, finding your own way of going your own way, will allow you to finally leave most of it behind. And for me, and many others, that entails leaving behind the new world and the mentality that is inextricably linked to the new world. If peace of mind is what you seek, if you find chasing shadows yields little, and all the neon lights and promises you were given fall on increasingly deaf ears, maybe it's time to go someplace else. Not for love, not for glory nor money, but simply to exist in a state of being tolerable to yourself as a man going his own way, resistant to the din of your place of origin, cutting through the illusions. The distinction can be found in the idea that whilst you can be an alien in a familiar world, and you can be an alien in an unfamiliar world, the latter is vastly preferable because it does not pester you with notions that things are otherwise. It is coldly, harshly true in that sense. And if the dreams of the new world ring hollow and empty to you, perhaps it is because they were ever lies, not dreams. Perhaps it is time to leave the lies behind and move forward as the stranger you always were, but now actively know you are, going your own way, in your own way. Thank you very much for watching. As YouTube has demonetized this channel, it now operates solely off of the generosity and contributions of its subscribers. Please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Any and all support is more than appreciated. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.